Hello and welcome to the Amateur of Life and Death podcast. I'm Laura East.
And I'm Luke Plimmer.
Each episode takes a look at a different aspect of the wonderful world of amateur theatre, and features an amateur theatre maker talking about their theatrical life, theatrical loves, and the times when they've died on stage. This month's episode focuses on the Crescent's upcoming production of Othello.
And our backstage pass holder John O'Neill will be exploring the iconic props department with the production assistants for Othello, Steve and Jess.
And Luke and I are joined this episode by Colin Simmons, who's directing the Crescent's upcoming production of Othello. Colin has brightened the Crescent stages for many years as an actor, director, production assistant and set designer, appearing in over 30 plays from Pygmalion to Equus, from Gaslight to American Buffalo, and directing productions including Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde and Sergeant Musgrave's Dance.
So we are delighted now to welcome Colin onto the podcast. Colin, thank you so much for coming to join us.
It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you. So you're currently directing the Crescent's latest production of William Shakespeare's Othello, which is on from the 11th to the 25th of November. Can you tell us a bit about the play?
Certainly. It's one of his later plays. It's one of his longest plays. It's not a story originally by him, as is often the case with Shakespeare plays. He's weaved his magic around an already existing story. And this story is essentially about a man, a rather psychotic man, who is overlooked for promotion and then spends the next several days trying to plot a revenge on the general of the Venetian army who has overlooked him. So this, of course, is Iago, and the general is Othello, and Iago just sucks in various other characters into his dastardly plot to try and bring Othello down. But Iago is essentially mad. He is completely berserk, and his plan is very dangerous and very deadly.
The play itself was written in around 1603, we think. What do you think makes its plot and themes relevant to audiences 420 years on?
Well, that's a very good question, and that's a good question about any Shakespeare play. We're looking at it from such a long distance. This is a play which I would hope most people will never experience anything like what happens in it in their real lives. This is a play about berserk revenge, all the bad stuff, basically, which is still around today. There's a lot of what we now call gaslighting in the play. Iago is weaving various truths, if you like, amongst the other characters, which aren't really true, but he makes them believe him. All these sort of things still go on today, and I suppose there will be people who recognise that bad stuff still happening now. Of course, the main thing about Shakespeare is he's just such a genius at understanding human nature. Every character in every play is drawn practically from real life somewhere, and when you're sitting in an audience watching such a play, you will recognise people you know from the characters that you see in front of you. So it's not like, a remote 400-year-old game that we're playing. People will think, oh yes, I know somebody like that, or oh yes, something like that happened to me. It's not a preachy play, though. It doesn't tell people what to think or how to think. It just presents a story, a rather gripping story that lasts about 2.5 hours in our version. And we just hope people will enjoy that, go along with it.
Can't wait.
So what's the setting of your production of Othello? Is it modern or traditional, and what are you doing with the staging?
Well, the staging is, we're doing it in the round. We're not making it easy for ourselves. We're doing it with the audience on 4 sides, so all the cast are utterly exposed at all times. There's nowhere to hide on the stage at all. The setting, well, when I began thinking about this, I decided that the only real restriction I wanted was that the use of swords wouldn't look anachronistic. Yeah. And this is the idea I went to the wardrobe department with, and we we had a little discussion about it, and eventually we've settled on about 1900, or just before, which is just about the latest kind of period you can still get away with swords. I mean, a lot of Shakespeare is set in more modern times, 20th century times, and then sometimes somebody draws a sword and you think, well, hang on a minute, that should be a gun, surely. I didn't want that kind of imbalance, so we've gone with 1900. I think it works very well. It's sufficiently remote in the past that it feels historical, but it's not really, really ancient either. You know, the costumes are going to look beautiful, which is just as well because we have no set to speak of.
This is in the Ron Barber studio.
This is in the studio, that's correct, yes. So, in the round, audience on four sides, playing area of about 6 metres by 4 entrances for all the actors to come in and out of, and about 1900. That sums it up, I think. It's not in the correct time period for that particular war between Venice and the Turks in Cyprus. But, you know, that doesn't really matter at the end of the day. The story doesn't change at all. So we've just gone along with the original countries.
Othello has about 3,560 lines.
I'll take your word for it.
About.
I've not counted
just
them.
off the top of my head, you know. It's making it the 6th longest of all of Shakespeare's plays.
Yep.
Iago and Othello are both in his top 10 of characters with the most lines.
Oh, they never stop talking.
We understand that you've cut the play for
Yes.
the performance, which theatre companies often need to do for longer plays.
That's
and
right.
You've alluded to the length.
Yes,
as well.
it was a brief. In fact, I was told, once I'd been told that I was going to be directing it, the next thing I was told was we need it to be about 2.5 hours long. We are expecting a great many school parties to come and see it, and we don't want to keep them up all night.
No.
So we're hoping that we can sort of finish somewhere around 10 o'clock. I don't know exactly what it will be yet, but something like that.
And it's running for 2 weeks.
It's
well,
running
so
for
you've
2
got to
weeks.
Get your cast out alive.
Well, exactly. It's going to be very, very strenuous for them doing this play for 2 weeks. Cutting it to 2.5 hours is a big ask.
Can
as you
tell
say,
us a bit about your process for...
Yeah, well, I mean, an uncut version of the play would probably take about 3.25 hours to perform. So we are talking about cutting about a quarter of the play. The good thing about this really is that this particular play it's about one thing.
Yeah.
There's no subplots. It's all about Iago's plot all the way through. So that in a sense makes it a bit easier to decide which bits to keep and which bits to throw away, because there's a certain amount of repetition, there's a certain amount of wordiness that we don't necessarily need to tell the story. I'd never done anything like it before. It was very hard. It took me many weeks. I did 4 drafts, each one getting slightly shorter than the last. And I think I managed to get it down to I think we've got it down to 2.5 hours. It's just a question of making sure you don't cut any really famous lines as well. Lines that people will be sitting here looking forward to because they
All
know them.
children there with pencils.
Well,
going,
exactly. The
Wasn't
children
that
will
bit
know the play probably better than we do if they've been studying it for any length of time. They'd be most upset if we missed out some of the very famous stuff. So, yeah, I think that the essence of the play is intact and the story is intact. So let's hope it makes sense to everybody.
Is it true that Othello is your favourite Shakespeare play?
It is.
Yeah, what makes it special?
There's a couple of things, I think. One of the things is that it's one of the 2 plays I studied when I was at school. We did, this would be for A-level, and we did Othello and we did The Winter's Tale. And The Winter's Tale has never really stayed with me, but Othello has been like a companion all through my life, really. It's been like a friend there. I've always admired the play. It sometimes happens, I think, something you study at school, if you liked it, it stays with you. And I did A-level music as well, and some of the pieces that we studied for that have remained favourites throughout my life. And I think it's just the act of engaging with them very closely and studying them and talking about them. It really kind of infiltrates your mind, and you know, it stays with you a long time. So I think that's part of it. another part of it is it is quite an unusual play. I've already said that it's quite compressed. There's only one major plot, so that's a compression. There's a relatively small number of major characters in it. That's another compression. There's been millions of words written about the time it takes to go through the play. There's 2 or 3 different timelines happening at the same time, but the one the audience will notice will be that the majority of the play seems to take place over about a day and a half. So that's another compression as well. Lots of scenes take place in rooms, corridors, dark streets. It's all about things pressing in on you, and we've continued that, of course, by making the stage area quite small and claustrophobic. So it's somehow this just appeals to me in some way. It's not a sprawling play that goes off in all directions. It's very tight.
It sounds very driven and relentless.
Relentless is a good word for it, I think. It is pretty relentless. Once it starts, it sort of accelerates until its vicious conclusion.
So you mentioned at school, was that your first experience of Othello?
Yes.
Yeah.
First experience of Shakespeare at all, really. Yeah, I'd never seen any Shakespeare before that. So, yeah, like most kids, I guess, the first experience is that, you sit in the classroom with the book open in front of you and have a horrible time because you don't understand you don't understand a word of what you're reading to start with. So, yeah, that was definitely my first experience of it.
Do you have a favourite moment or line in the play, and why? This could also be something that came out of rehearsal.
Yeah, I just love the Iago soliloquies, of which there are many. Just seeing him there alone on the stage, weaving his plot together, involving the audience, letting everyone see just how nasty a piece of work he is. It's quite thrilling to watch, so I would have to mention the Iago soliloquies. They are quite astounding, really. And there's another moment closer to the end of the play. I think it's Act 4, Scene 3, which is just the two ladies, Desdemona and Emilia, on their own. They have a whole scene to themselves, and they're just in one of Desdemona's private rooms, and they're just sitting there, and she's getting ready for bed. They're just chatting, reminiscing. It's a very, very lovely, quiet moment with so much mayhem going on around, and it's really the last quiet moment you'll have in the play, because after that scene it just goes mental. Basically, it goes berserk. People start dying. Spoilers. I think you know that Shakespeare tragedy is going to have people dying. You know that, don't you? So yes, I do enjoy just sitting there, just quietly listening to the two of them chatting together. Yeah. It's a nice contrast.
So you trained as an actor at the nearby Birmingham School of Acting, now part of the Royal Birmingham Conservatoire at Birmingham City University. It's not Birmingham's. What do you see as the key challenges or rewards of producing Shakespeare's plays as an actor, or as well as a director?
Yeah, I was. It wasn't called that when I was there. I was there a long time ago. It was the Birmingham School of Speech Training and Dramatic Art, and it was in a big house on Church Road in Edgbaston. And I was there between about 1980 and 83. I did a 3-year acting course there. So, yeah, that seems a very, very long time ago. I think the main challenge for actors in this and any Shakespeare play really is delivering a 400-year-old text in such a way that it is understandable by the many people who will be in the audience who have never seen or heard Shakespeare before, won't be familiar with the vocabulary or the allusions. It is a big challenge, and we've had to make sure that the actors, as well as just speaking the words, it's all about gesture as well, and the way they interact with each other, to tell the story as clearly and as simply as we can. We know that a lot of things will go over people's heads. Of course they will. It's inevitable. But I think that the story will be clear enough, And if you don't understand every line and every word, it won't really matter. You'll still get what the story is all about. So, yeah, I would say that would be the main challenge for actors in this.
So, Colin, as a well-respected actor at the Crescent, can you tell us a bit?
You must be joking.
Can you tell us, how did you get involved with the Crescent from actor training to now? So was it first as an actor or as a director?
Well, it was, I suppose if you could call it as such, it was as an actor. This would have been a very long time ago, and not in this building. Many people listening will know that this is not the Crescent's first building, it's the third one, I think. But I joined the Crescent when I was in my late teens, and that was the previous building that we had. And it's quite strange to relate, but I was listening to your podcast last month when you were talking to Graham Braidwood, and he happened to mention that a lady called Roma de Roper got him involved in the Crescent all those years ago. And I have to say exactly the same thing happened to me. It wasn't the same circumstances exactly. Roma was an English teacher at the school I went to, and I was never in her class, but she did direct me in a school play. She directed me in a school version of The Caucasian Chalk Circle.
That's my favourite play from school.
Is it?
Just as a full circle moment there.
I think that's perhaps really one of the first times I realised I was getting quite interested in theatre. But then it was shortly after I left school, as I say, I would have been 18 or 19, something like that, and she contacted me to say, well, the Crescent's doing a production of The Royal Hunt of the Sun by Peter Schaffer. It's about the invasion of South America by the Spanish, yes. And the director, who was Ewan Rose, who used to be a Crescent member, he's looking for a lot of youngsters to play Incas. Would you be interested? And I thought, well, why not? I suppose so. And it was, it was an amazing experience. Apart from having to put body makeup on every night as an Inca, I was actually given a couple of lines to say, which was great. And I just had an absolute blast and decided I wanted to hang around after the show was over and just try and learn some more about theatre, because my enthusiasm wasn't coupled with knowledge at all at that point, and I just wanted to learn more about how theatres worked. And I actually stayed on and worked as a PA on 3 different shows, and that gave me quite a good knowledge of how plays are put on and how shows are put together. And all the time, I was getting further and further into this, and I decided, right, I'm off to drama school, mate. I want to see if I can make a professional out of this. So I was with the Crescent back then, about 2 years or something like that, and then I went off and went to drama school.
So it actually started Crescent, then drama school?
That's right, Crescent came first, yeah, and that was probably responsible for making me want to have a go at it. Yeah. And I don't talk too much about that particular 10 years of my life, but I did some acting work. Yeah. I did a few small TV roles. I did a bit of theatre tours, but I never got to the point which I was aiming for, which was where one job leads to the next. Mm. It was always, okay, we'll do this job, that's over with, now I've got to look for the next one, and it might be weeks or months before you find another one. And there was no fluency at all in that, and I gradually realised that although I loved acting, I didn't much care for living the life of an actor, if you understand the distinction. Certainly. And after about 10 years, I just said, you know what, I've had enough of this. I'm happy I've had a go. I've met people I would never otherwise have met. I've been places I would never have gone to. I had a good time. I don't regret it at all. But I've never regretted giving it up. It wasn't like, that's 10 years. It just happened to be about 10 years. It wasn't a specific decision. And all this time, my friends were doing all normal life things that I wasn't able to do. I wanted to get a proper job with a proper salary. I wanted to buy a house. I wanted to get married. All these very boring things which somehow appealed to me. And I've done all three of those things now. But I gave up theatre for a long, long time. And when I say I gave it up, I didn't even go to theatre for years and years and years. I just put it all behind me. But after several years, that little voice came back in my head saying, yeah, you used to like doing that, didn't you? Might be quite nice to do that again. And I thought, well, I can still do this in an amateur theatre. I happen to know one that's very, very good. I hadn't kept in touch with the Crescent and what they were doing, but the internet had just started at this point, and so I was able to go onto a website, see what the Crescent were up to. Oh my God, they're still there. They're still doing stuff. Oh, it's a different building now, And I looked on the auditions page, and I saw that there was an Agatha Christie audition coming up, and I thought, my wife really likes Agatha Christie. She's a big fan. I thought, it'd really give her a kick if I could get cast in an Agatha Christie play. So I went along to the auditions, and of course fate intervened and I didn't get cast. I did get recalled. I got down to the last four for playing the inspector, but it didn't happen. But that didn't matter because I was back, and I met people I'd seen all those years ago. I could see the theatre was still as good as it ever was, and so I tried again a couple of weeks later and managed to get cast in Billy Liar, which was my first proper part in a Crescent show. That was 2006, and I've been here ever since. And I've been blessed with, being very busy here, really. I counted up the other day. I've been in 33 plays since 2006.
Just as an actor.
As an actor, and this is my 7th outing as a director with Othello as well. I've never directed before either. So Crescent's been very, very good to me, really.
So tell us about your first love.
My first love?
How did it start? Is there a key moment?
A key moment? Well, I've already spoken about my inauguration as an Inca, but I suppose it did happen before. It goes back to school, I think. Yeah. I can remember this would be junior school, probably. Yes, it would be junior school, and we did, I can't even call it a production. It certainly wasn't a production, but it was based on the Jungle Book, and I was one of the elephants.
Of course.
And I remember my mother made me this fantastic trunk out of toilet rolls. And I ended up being the comedy elephant. I kept thinking up business that, would make me stand out from the other elephants, basically doing something different to everyone else. And I think that's my first memory of enjoying myself.
Yes, amazing.
Enjoying myself on stage and having people laugh because of funny things you were doing. That's my first memory of that, I think, really.
I think that's the best answer we've ever had to that question. I think so. That's amazing. So, that was your first love.
Yeah.
I know we've talked quite in depth about your experiences in the theatre, but is there any particular moment that's been the love of your theatrical life, apart from maybe what you've spoken about?
Well, I have been lucky enough to... I think every actor has a kind of short list of roles they really want to play.
Yeah.
And, you don't very often actually get the chance. I've had the chance for a couple of these here. And, one of them was the psychiatrist Dysart in Equus. I was lucky enough to be given that role. That was one I'd always wanted to play. More recently, I played Professor Henry Higgins in Pygmalion. That was another, box ticked.
Yeah.
So I suppose those really would be the standouts. Where I've played a lot of roles where I've just really enjoyed myself, but there are some kind of iconic roles that you've known about for years and years and think, one day maybe I'll be able to play those. And those are a couple that I have actually managed to play, and it's been every bit as a joy as I knew it would be.
So speaking of that magical list, or it could be something else entirely, and we've heard about the inspector role that you didn't get here,
Yeah.
But drew you back in. Tell us about the one that got away.
The one that got away, I half caught up with, but the one that got away was Iago in Othello. and it got away for the reason that I got too old to play it. I've always wanted to play that part, and when Othello was announced for this season, my first thought was, oh God, what am I going to do now? Am I going to audition for Iago as a 60-plus-year-old, or am I going to put into directing? Because I have always wanted to direct Othello as well. It's the only Shakespeare I've ever wanted to direct, really. And I thought, let's be reasonable about this. Let's put in to direct it and see if we can get that. And I was amazed to be given. I really was amazed to be allowed to do it, because normally with Shakespeare here, the director is normally like somebody in education, an English teacher, a drama teacher, somebody in education that knows their stuff, not someone like me who knows nothing. But for some reason they decided to, take a punt, and they gave me the gig. But I just think to myself, if I hadn't got it, if someone else was directing it, would I really have gone to the audition and gone for Iago? And I kind of think I would, just for the hell of it, just so that I couldn't blame myself for never having had a go at getting cast at it. But I mean, it's got away, but I've allowed it to get away by directing instead.
Tell us about a time when you died on stage.
Things go wrong all the time, don't they? Nothing has ever gone really drastically wrong. I mean, obviously I have experienced what most actors have experienced in terms of forgetting the line that comes next. That's one of the things you dread most, I think, as an actor, and eventually it happens to everybody. So I mean, I don't want to think about it. It'll bring me out in a hot flush if I do, but there have been a few of those, certainly. And also, similarly, there have been times when you're on stage, somebody's supposed to come on and they don't. And then you've got to decide what are you going to do about that. Yeah. And of course, it depends on the play as to what you actually can do. So those are fairly trivial moments, really, but I can't relate any major disaster. I've been lucky enough not to have any major disasters. My characters have died on stage a few times, though. I've been shot and various things have happened. Poisoned and,
Nice. How do you find that to do? Is that?
Oh, it's great fun.
Yeah?
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic
Did you milk it?
Of course you do. Well, if the director lets you will, yeah, certainly.
What were some of those plays, can you remember?
Well, I remember at drama school we did a play called Bingo by Edward Bond, which is about the last days of Shakespeare's life in Stratford-upon-Avon. Fiction, of course. In that particular play, Shakespeare takes poison and ends his own life. So that was fun. And I decided I was going to die and keep my eyes open as well. And I needed to do that for a couple of minutes. But it wasn't very pleasant, but I did give it a go. And there was one point where another character had to step over me, and she had a long dress on, and there was just that second where I was completely invisible to the audience, and I had a really good blink. Really good blink then, just for that second, and it gave me a second wind for the rest of it.
Nice. Well, Colin, thank you so much for coming onto the podcast. Lovely to speak to you.
My pleasure.
And we're looking forward to seeing Othello.
Excellent. I hope you enjoyed.
Thank you. Thanks again to Colin Simmons for the great interview. Othello is being performed between the 11th and the 25th of November at the Crescent Theatre, Birmingham.
Now we follow John into the depths of the Crescent as he takes his backstage pass to meet two of the creative minds behind the upcoming production.
Thanks both. Welcome, listeners, to this episode's bard-tinged amateur of life and death backstage pass. This month we are celebrating both Shakespeare's Othello, but also the oversized influence of the meek and mild stage prop. Just as Iago, the villain in Othello, weaves his malign deception on the play's dramatis personae, props are priceless when it comes to weaving our imaginations into the imaginary world of the play. I've travelled deep into the subterranean heart of the Crescent Theatre to the props archive. All around me, shelves are stacked high and deep with objects. I'm joined by Steve Davis and Jess Shannon, who are working on props for the Crescent's upcoming production of Othello. Hello both.
Hello, how are you? Hello.
Hello, welcome to the Amateur of Life and Death podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you. You've made it sound like we're in Hogwarts or something.
It feels a bit like that, doesn't it, when we're
Does
down
feel a
here
bit like that, yes.
in the
cupboard.
in
under
the props
stairs.
archive.
It is a bit like a cupboard under the stairs.
Yeah.
We have travelled through the wall of platform 13.
No.
No.
9 and 3/4.
9 and 3/4,
sorry.
that's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Very
in-
different.
into the props room at the Crescent.
Well, if we went through 9 and 3/4, we would have gone to Hogwarts, but we went through
No.
platform 13.
Yeah,
I
we
think
did.
we ended up here. Steve, why are props important to you and the drama?
Big question. I think props are really important. I suppose it's important to say that there are lots of elements that make the play work, but I think props can help really tell the story. I think they're an important part of telling the story. From our perspective, what we've learnt, I think, is about making sure you choose the right props and the props that work well with that production. Really, I suppose, I don't feel that a prop should overshadow a production in many ways. It shouldn't be about the props, but they should complement it perfectly. So
Props are symbols, aren't they?
Yeah,
And symbols are
yeah.
really important in Othello. So it's important we pick the right symbol.
Absolutely. So I think what's important about props is they complement the production and they're an important part of what makes it what it is, really.
Yeah, but nobody should notice them, and I think that's an interesting point. It's a bit like the music or the drums in a song. If you notice it, then something's not quite right.
Yeah, and I suppose every production, props play a different role. So for some productions, there's a much more detailed set, isn't there? And there's more
like
to
in
it, and
Blithe
that's
Spirit.
Blithe Spirit, where that was really important to have that detail of that, the living room of the family. But in Othello, the props will play a different role, which we'll talk
It's
to you a bit about later.
In the Father, the last one I was in, the props were slowly taken off stage. So we started out with a set full of stuff and props, and bit by bit, the props were taken away to deteriorate the set and deteriorate the character. So it was
because
props. The removal of props is also just as important as putting the props on the stage.
Because that play was about a person who was slowly sinking into dementia, wasn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
So the props was that a symbol of him losing his memory. Maybe.
Yeah, the stripping of the stage was symbolic of his mind, really.
Yeah.
So props are a visual tool, I think, for directors and actors.
Yeah, absolutely. Jess, we are in the props room, surrounded on all sides by hundreds of things. Can you describe the room for our listeners and tell us how it's organised? How do you find anything? To me, it looks... I mean, things are kind of collected together into bunches, but it's a hell of a mess, isn't it?
Go on, Jess. Explain the Hogwarts of the props room.
It is a bit of an archive, really, because I can see stuff. I can see a sign saying "Don't feed the plants," and I'm assuming that's from Little Shop of Horrors or something.
Yeah.
I can see a fake rat poison box. I can see a giant Lipton lemon iced tea bottle. Not sure who that belongs to.
Which we would have used in Blithe Spirit, and this would be the brandy.
Oh, is that the
So,
brandy?
yeah.
There's loads of Tupperware with labels. So there's a box that says mirrors. There's a box that says blue tack. There's a box that says money bags. Because again, the thing to remember about props as well is that not all plays take place in different parts of history. So
Yeah, so
you
the
know-
money bags aren't little plastic bags
No.
from TSB. I don't know if anyone remembers
So
those.
there's silk ones. There's other ones. There's all sorts. I can see cutlery. I can see bowls. I can see a fake stack of scones. Is that scones?
We think so. We were
They look
talking
nice.
about
They've
this
got lovely
earlier.
cherries on top. I'm
Yeah.
not sure they taste that nice, but it looks good.
Yeah, so I can see a big stack of bottles and a tea set. Is that a tea set?
Yeah, that could be worth a bit, though.
So
Yeah.
silver-plated tea set, I'd
Silver.
say.
Shall I see if it's marked?
There's big shelves full of ornaments and candlesticks, and there's a giant rubber dinghy.
Of course there is. Of course there
What's
is.
that?
There's a big crucifix, wicker baskets. There's
So-
a big filing cabinet full of letters and wax seals
Oh,
and
interesting. But what if you want to find something? Is there a system?
yes.
There is a system. I mean, we are both relatively new to props, so I suppose Jackie is probably the system.
Jackie's God.
that tells us where things are and what to do. But there is a system to it. So obviously, there is a whole cabinet full of things. So in terms of cutlery, all sorts of things, everything is labelled, so you can quite easily find what you want. So that works well. And in here, the drawers are labelled, and you know basically where to find things. So over there, you've got sheet music and clipboards, paper, envelopes. So it's relatively well organised and ordered.
I suppose it's a bit like the British Museum. If something went missing, you might not realise straight away.
No, Jackie would, but we might not.
Jackie would.
Jackie would.
They have, I suppose they keep all the swords and the knives, like the stage fighting stuff separate, and what else is kept?
Yeah, that's under lock and key.
Yeah,
isn't it? All those things.
So safety is important with props as well.
There is a door that says secure store,
Yeah.
and I do wonder what's in there.
I'm not important enough to know.
So I think it will be things that just need to be locked away. Really, things that are, for safety reasons mostly are kept under lock and key.
So there's no diamonds, the coronation jewels.
No, listeners can be assured that there are no diamonds hidden.
There'll be plenty
in the
of
props room at the Crescent.
Plenty of fake diamonds, sure.
Maybe that's where the missing items from the British Museum have ended up.
Who knows?
Yeah.
Who knows?
Jackie took them. No, okay.
Steve, in Othello,
Hello.
one way that Shakespeare shows us that Iago, the villain, is getting a hold over Othello, who is the main character, is the way Othello begins to use animal imagery in his speech. This is a descriptive trait that he picks up from Iago, and it shows us that he's coming round to Iago's way of thinking. Iago, in the first 3 acts, mentions ass, doors, flies, ram, jennet, guinea hen, baboon, wildcat, snipe, goats, monkeys, monster, and wolves. Othello then goes on to use animals in his speech in the same way as his mind is shown to be corrupted. So, what would be your favourite animal-related prop in the prop store? Can you dust it down from the shelves and describe it for our listeners?
Well, it has to be the one that I can't dust down and bring down to you, but it is staring at us across the room, which is a steel effect lion staring down at us always when you're in here preparing props or cucumber sandwiches for Blythe Spirit, whatever I'm doing, the lion is looking down on me. And I assume it's from Lion Witch and the Wardrobe, I guess.
The one that is up in the glass cabinet, the one by the main house.
Right, okay.
Because it was worn by somebody. I can't remember. Was it Andrew Lowry?
Yeah, Andrew Lowry as Aslan.
Yeah, he wore the big lion's head on top of his, as I think, sort of hat.
Yeah.
So we assume it's from there, or maybe something from a Christmas Carol production. Maybe the door knocker bit. Maybe who knows? It would be a massive door
I
knocker.
prefer to think it's the comforting presence of Aslan
Possibly
in the props room.
And for anyone who's not seen it, to describe it, I would say it's steel effect. We probably think it's plastic, but we're not.
Should we touch it, Jess? Go on.
I feel like if
stand
we
up and
touch it, we're going to
Don't
destroy.
pull it off the wall because
the
whole
destroy
lot
the
might-
reality of it. But
Can you reach it?
Oh, it's quite solid actually.
Who is it?
Is it plastic?
I think it's plastic.
Yeah, Jess thinks it's plastic, which is disappointing because I wanted it to be this,
Real metal.
this real metal steel lion staring down at us,
Very patriotic, I suppose.
glittering with the dim lights of the prop room.
Yes, it would scare anybody off if they did try and steal something. I'm sure the
it's
lights would start to glow in his
gargoyle.
eyes.
It's the gargoyle that warns people away from the unsafe things in the prop room.
It is.
Jess, in a similar way, can you help us explore the props archive through a theme that runs through Othello? A second trait that transfers from villain to victim, Iago to Othello, is descriptions of hell, damnation, and all things diabolic. What can you find that we can relate to hell and damnation?
Well, when I was thinking about this question and I was looking around the props room earlier, I found like a witch's face mask full of grubby grey hair and a big, horrible face full of warts. And I was going to say that, but as I was looking over Steve's shoulder, I spotted a skeleton staring out at me.
Oh, yeah.
From
wow,
the depths of the from the props room. So behind what looks like a kind of facsimile hedge and a bunch of brooms, this skull is looking at me.
I'm not sure that was there Sunday.
Don't
worry
say
you.
that.
I
Don't say that.
don't
it was there
think that
Sunday.
was there 10 minutes
Don't
ago.
say that.
I honestly
Don't
think
say
that has just appeared.
Oh no.
And over my shoulder. Thanks, Jess.
You're welcome.
I'll have to invoke Aslan to get rid of.
But certainly a skull is reminiscent of Hell and Damnation, I think.
Yes.
Very Shakespearean as well. Not quite for Othello, but
Yes.
very Shakespearean.
But for Hamlet, and he
Well
looks
done.
at him. What's that character?
Yorick.
Yorick. Alas, poor Yorick. We knew him well. Steve, so we've gone off on a tangent about props that could represent or reinforce elements of the drama. that we talked about a little bit. Props could do that at the beginning as well. But bringing us back to reality, what props are actually required for Othello? Where are you in the process?
Yeah, I think it's important to say that props in Othello are actually quite minimal. There are not a lot of props we're using. I think that's important because the nature of our production, so not to spoil too much for the listeners, but it is in the round, and I think it is a formation of in the round that's never happened in the studio before. So it's a little bit of a different setting. Oh, right. But I think it's accurate to say that it's going to be very intense because the audience are very, very close to the actors and the performance. But the kind of props we've got at the moment, so there are lanterns we're using. So there are lots of scenes when it's supposed to be dark and it's street light. So they're coming in with lanterns, which we think will create a great effect. As you can imagine for Othello, many swords and knives that we're using. I think we've found almost every sword we could possibly find, and we're using them for this production. There's tables and a map as well at one point for the Duke of Venice to do his battle plans with. There's of course a bed, which is really important in the final scene. So the challenge is getting a bed that we can get onto stage through the space that we've got between the audience and set it up in time. And my understanding
is period?
It's 1900 roughly,
right.
roundabout. End of Victorian era, we think around 1900 costume wise, and that's the setting.
So a Victorian bedstead has got to.
Well, we think so, except to say because of the nature of the staging, it's going to be quite difficult to get it through. So we think it's going to have to be something that's possibly folded in some way and brought on, but we'll see. Keith Harris is on that at the moment, so if there's a man that's going to make it work, it's going to be Keith Harris.
So we've chucked it over to set design. Good idea.
And I think one thing that we're using quite a lot of is fake blood. Quite a lot of fake blood, so there will be quite a bit of blood in this production.
Yeah, I suppose as well it's important to recognise that once a prop is made, it can be reused. So I think we're using the handkerchief from the production of Othello they did in 2005, was it?
Wow.
So because if it's not broke, why?
How do you know it's the same handkerchief?
Because Stuart said it was.
That is amazing that Stuart knows.
I think he kept them.
Has he had it in an envelope marked Othello for 20 years?
Well, yeah, but I suppose if it's somebody makes something so beautiful as this, because the handkerchief is the most important prop for the action of the tragedy.
Oh, yes, of course.
If somebody makes something so beautiful, it's important to save it, which is why it's important. Props. People are here to look after the props, and because it's recycling. I suppose it's it's extra symbolic knowing that this prop has been used for the same story before, but it's going to be used in a slightly different way.
It adds an edge to it. The fact that this one thing from a previous production,
and I'm sure these objects become a bit more holy. I suppose the more they get used. Yeah. Because I know we've all been in a show where we look at somebody and then we look at somebody on stage and go, I wore that in something, or I used that candlestick in that production, or I held that gun.
It's an interesting way of thinking of it, that the props in some ways, when they're upcycled, recycled, reused, and they become totemic and symbolic for the actors, that they sort of grace the production with something of theatrical history for the actors. So the props can be just as important for the actors as they can for the audience. Yeah.
And actually for some of them have got Crescent history. That's the thing, isn't it? Some of these props have got Crescent history. I mean, we're using a bench in Othello that we've used in Taming of the Shrew in the summer, because it just fits perfectly for what we need, and it worked then and it works now. So it's really quite useful, isn't it, to recycle and reuse props.
And an interesting fact about the fake blood, which I learned just before we hit record. Do you remember what you told me?
I did. So we've got some blood capsules that me and Jess will be making up, but this is zesty mint flavoured stage blood. So the actors will put the blood capsule into their mouth and at the right time bite it. So hopefully everyone knows that taste in their mouth is a lovely zesty mint.
So instead of it actually, I don't know why, but I assumed it would kind of taste a bit like blood. But no, you get exactly. You get a nice zesty hit from it.
Smell it.
I'm not convinced. I've just opened it, and I'm smelling it. Try not to spit it on the floor because we'll be in trouble if we do.
Have a little sip. Tell us what you think.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the zesty mint. What do you think, Jess? Is that zesty mint?
I'm not getting any zesty mint.
We're not getting any zesty mint. John?
No, absolutely not.
I was in a production before of Lord of the Flies about 5 years ago, and with all the fake blood, I don't know what it was. All I could taste was pure sugar. By the end of the run, my teeth were like, when you eat so much sugar that your teeth sort of feel really gross.
Start to get sugar hit hyperactivity.
So by the end of the run of Lord of the Flies, I was eating. I was exposed to so much sugary fake blood that it kind of set me.
I think the zesty mint would be distracting. I suppose you get used to it, but If it was me, I'd feel terribly distracted by this. You know, you're at a scene where you get blooded for whatever reason, and suddenly this, very nice mint toast.
Well, I'm not sure whether we should tell the actors it's zesty mint, because when it's not zesty mint, they might be quite disappointed.
Oh.
But we'll see. We'll find out when somebody will bite into one, and we'll let you know if they are indeed.
Maybe it'll be like Harry Potter. We could spike the fake blood with bad flavours and see if they can keep a straight face.
Yeah.
What flavours could we?
Yeah, like
different flavour every night.
What flavour could we spike them with?
Yeah.
I'm not going to do it, I promise. We could.
Another interesting fact is that you aren't just doing props. So you're multi-rolling in this production. What else are you doing?
So we are also PAs, so we're production assistants.
Yeah.
What does that involve? How are you with that?
Quite a lot, really. I mean, it's a 2-week run, so there's 2 of us. So I'm quite thankful there's 2 of us, really, because that's just really quite useful for a show with a big run, because most Crescent shows are a week, and Othello is 2 weeks.
Yeah, so I totted out how many show dates there are.
Yeah.
There are 14 show dates,
Wow.
including 3 matinees.
Gosh.
I was a bit surprised when I read the dates. I thought I've read that wrong, but
No,
2-week run.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
So it's a lot of things, really. I think part of it is you're a bit of a kind of a bridge between the director and the cast, so you're a go-to person for everyone. Obviously, if the director needs something or needs to make something work, then we're the people that might go away and think, how can we make it work?
Liaising with people that we need, so if we want to get somebody in from outside, we'll be sending emails and stuff, or messages.
The big thing is the blocking, so
Yeah.
you keep the book of the script, and you have to block everything, so any changes, so that once we get to the run, you've got the definitive blocking book of movements. So that's a really important part of it.
That's such an important responsibility, because when there's a disagreement about how we did it last time, the
you
book
are
is
the
that
authority.
definitive authority, isn't it?
I suppose as well as being a PA is kind of or the art of blocking is really interesting, because everyone notates and draws diagrams in slightly different ways.
Yeah.
So
And
it's been really interesting.
For the uninitiated, blocking is how we decide where people are going to stand and move on stage during the rehearsal process.
Yeah, and actually for us it's a bit more complicated, because normally when you're blocking, you can say upstage left, stage right, centre stage. We're in the round with 4 entrances, so you haven't got any upstage right or left. So we have 4 entrances that we've labelled A, B, C, D. So we've actually been drawing lots of little maps in the book, and lots of like arrows and crosses and movement that way, because actually it's quite difficult to describe exactly where the actor is.
And even for me, A, B, C, D, I'd need north, south, east, west. I would, because when I've done it, I would do UL upstage left or DL downstage left. That's how I've always done it.
So we had to find a system that works, but I think it does work, because obviously when we've gone back over the book, it's worked, and we've been able to say we don't do it this way, we do it this way. So I think it's worked well. And then one of the other jobs is the programme. So you have to get all the details together for the programme and send it off, which has to go Saturday. So I'm going to get you to check that, Jess, because I brought you with me.
And
so
I bet there's still some actor biographies outstanding.
I am missing one. I am mentioning no names, but there is one outstanding at this point.
There are always stragglers for that. That's always a task that never gets done. For both of you, a big theme in Othello is jealousy and envy. In the performing arts, what talents or people are you most envious of?
I'm jealous of people that were taught or trained how to dance. I never had any ballet or tap or jazz or. Don't get me wrong, I had a very lovely childhood. I had lots of opportunity to learn lots of skills, but dancing is not one of them. And although I can follow steps and things, and when I've been in musical theatre shows, I have been able to dance with lots of support and encouragement. I've never been a dancer. I really love dancing, and I wish that I could have just, I don't know, learned how to dance like a professional. Yeah. Whenever I see people dancing properly, I think, oh, that's how it should be done, not the way I've been doing it.
What about the ballet? How do you feel?
It's beautiful.
It's beautiful.
And it makes me feel more clumsy than ever. Whenever I watch somebody elegant dance or leap across the stage in anything I've ever seen, I feel so much joy and so much envy.
It's the way they make it look so easy.
Yeah.
And the reality is a whole different thing, you know, because I've done some basic dance stuff in the things I've been in, and I'm not a dancer, and so it really is really difficult. And someone will go, right, do this, 1, 2, 3, right, off you go, and I'll be like, what was the first step? Exactly. What am I doing now?
It's remembering the sequences, isn't it? Yeah.
So I have to watch the video of the dance, and I have to learn it just by memory again and again. Where some people just go through it once and they've got it, and have that dance memory.
Yeah,
Call it
dance memory.
I have no dance
In Pride
memory
and Prejudice,
whatsoever.
we had to dance and talk, and the amount of concentration that took from me, it was just me very depressingly on my own in my kitchen, just having to dance it over and over again until I could get it right, because I wish I had dance memory.
Yeah.
And I think for me, it's similar to you in the sense that I think just people, the whole triple threat thing, people that can sing and dance and act. So, I cannot sing.
It's the Holy Trinity, isn't it?
Really can't. So people that can just do all three of those, I just think is amazing.
Triple threat? I've never heard that
You've
expression
never heard that
before.
phrase? I've got that right, haven't I? It's called a triple threat. A triple threat if you can sing, dance and act. Yeah.
Why is it called triple threat?
Because it's 3.
Well, if you're up against someone for an audition or part,
True, I get
they're definitely a threat to you. If they can sing, dance, and you can't.
Yeah.
That's what I thought it meant. Am I wrong?
Yeah, no, I was just laughing because I was like, 3. Sorry, that was really
It's a
rude.
triple.
Yeah, the triple
Just
bit.
the English
I get.
teacher.
Yeah.
Just the English
Sorry.
teacher. He's just clarifying what we mean by triple.
Sorry.
But it's threat. But thank you for that
I'm so sorry, John.
clarification.
Triple threat. There you go.
Is there anything else we're envious of?
I'm envious all the time. I sit in rehearsals now. Even I won't give any names. But I just think I sit and watch our Othello rehearsals, and there are people who just watch and think, "Wow, that is amazing. That is just phenomenal." And I've seen it here with loads of productions and lots of people. You just sit and think, how do you do that? And again, stuff you might go and see on the West End, big famous people. There are just some people out there that you just think that is amazing. So I'm wowed and impressed all the time, really, and kind of wish I could do it.
No, I suppose it's admiration as well as envy.
Yeah,
admiration
absolutely.
of skill.
Yeah, it's tidy.
No, I'm just envious, Jeff. No, I know that's true.
I don't have the triple threat either, so no.
We're not triple threats then. None of us in the room.
I struggle
maybe as
to
a collective
retain.
we are a triple threat because there's 3 of us.
Yeah,
Okay,
maybe,
let's go with that then. Yeah. We're a threat because there's 3 of us. 3 triple, Jess. Triple 3.
Triple.
And as regular listeners will know, we like to throw word pairs at our guests so they can choose one word to keep, the one that appeals to them, and the other, like a drunken rowdy groundling, gets discarded. So, I know that might not make any sense, but it will once you've heard the first
Give us some
few
words.
From the following words, which will you keep, and maybe tell us why? And we'll start with...
Are we doing this as a pair together?
No, I'll give you
Separately?
a different word pair
okay.
each.
Okay,
Yeah.
and I'm going first.
You ready?
Yeah.
Okay.
Front of house or backstage?
Backstage.
It's an easy one, isn't it? Why backstage?
Just because I think... Why backstage? I think... I love the fact that you can do so much and watch it happening, and you haven't got the pressure of learning lines and being on the stage. And it's quite nice. People sometimes have to rely on you to do things. And I think that's a nice part of it. So yeah, I do enjoy backstage.
Jess, reproduction or original?
Ooh.
Can I interpret that however I want?
Yeah.
You can't say both.
Original.
Any reason why you don't have to have a reason?
I don't know. It's
You can
so
pass on the reason.
broad. I suppose there's a sanctity to the original anything,
True.
and I think reproductions and interpretations and revivals are valid, but there is something precious about the first, isn't there?
Old school or new school?
Ooh. I work in a school. Old school or new school? Actually, I think old school. Sometimes I think you can learn a lot. Sometimes you sometimes think it's good to come up with new ideas and new ways of doing things. But sometimes you have to realise that old school way of doing things sometimes is the best way.
Iambic pentameter or blank verse?
Ooh. What's easiest
Both
to learn?
Both are useful
What's easiest to learn?
as an actor. There's something satisfying. The last Shakespeare I was in was at Midsummer Night's Dream, and I loved doing the big speeches. That was in the iambic. There is something beautiful about iambic pentameter, the heartbeat sort of rhythm.
Yeah.
I like both. I think I'm going to choose iambic. Because
Good, I was going to say you can't choose both.
Yeah, no, I'm going to go with iambic because it's
Cool.
so satisfying.
Good. Globe London or RSC Stratford?
Oh, Globe London, every time.
Really?
I just love the space. I just think I've been there a few times, and I love getting a cushion and sitting on your cushion on your wooden bench. I went to see I think Much Ado many years ago, and it was pouring down with rain, absolutely pouring down. So the actors referring to the sunshine as they stood there in the rain. And yeah, the interaction with the audience is different. I just think it's great. I know it probably won't give you a real picture of what it was like to go and see Shakespeare 400 years ago, but it's as close as we can get it. We've got toilets now, so that's nice. So there's no buckets in around for people to go. You can actually go to the toilet now.
I've sat in the seat too many times where the pillar just blocks your view. Too bitter.
Yeah.
So they used to have buckets, I suppose they did back in the day.
No, you just.
No, well, you
need to go,
you just go. So if you're watching the play and you think you need to go to the toilet, you just go, and you don't worry about who's around you. All very different.
I suppose people do the same at festivals, don't they?
Yeah, in a big crowd. I've seen it done.
No Portaloos in Elizabethan England. So just a bucket.
Very true. Lust or love? You can pass on that one.
That's a big question.
That's a bit
on a
personal.
Thursday night.
It's a controversial one. You can pass if you want.
Let's go with love.
Oh, that's nice. Nice answer. Tragedy or comedy?
Ooh, that's difficult. I should say tragedy because we're doing Othello, but I have to say I think comedy is really important. I think having a good laugh and laughing, especially when you've had a bad day, I think it's really important. So I'm going to say comedy.
Folio or Facebook?
Oh my god. Well, I suppose Facebook can be Shakespearean sometimes.
I suppose if you kind of with friends.
Depends
with
on
the
who's
right
on
people.
Facebook.
I don't know.
There's not much Shakespeare on my feed.
No, but all life is art, isn't it?
Yeah, true.
I'm going to go with Folio though because I'm an English teacher.
Cool. Iago or Othello?
Oh, tough question. I think it's probably got to be Iago. I think, just in the sense of what he does, his manipulation. He is the bad guy, but there is something captivating about Iago and what he does in the play and the control he has. So, I think I'd have to say Iago. That's a tough one though.
Good answers. That was good fun. That was. Well, thank you very much for appearing on our humble little podcast.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thank you.
You're
Enjoyed
quite
that.
welcome. And just to recap the show dates, Othello is running at the Crescent Theatre from the 11th to the 25th of November. That's a 2-week run. It's 14 show dates, including 3 matinees, so you've got no excuse at all not to see it. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Amateur of Life and Death podcast. If you'd like to listen to more, make sure you subscribe at podcast.crescent-theatre.co.uk or via Spotify or Apple Podcasts to get the next episode. You can find out more about the Crescent Theatre Birmingham and our upcoming productions, including Othello, by visiting www.crescent-theatre.co.uk or by following us on social media.
Amateur of Life and Death is a Crescent Theatre production. This episode was presented and researched by Luke Glimmer, Liz Plumpton, John O'Neill and Laura East. The music is by Brendan Stanley, and the podcast is edited by Kevin Middleton.